Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the sources you choose and, well, we dig deep to find the most surprising facts, the most profound insights. And today, we're diving into a really unique personal story. It's one that challenges, I think, our understanding of identity, memory, and even justice itself. We're focusing on excerpts from a Substack reflection called Autistic Justice, Remembering the Child the State Tried to Forget. It's powerful stuff.
It really is. And this source, it gives us such a fascinating lens, doesn't it? How personal stories can just light up these huge systemic issues. We're going to unpack these two concepts the author brings up. Autistic justice, which is this fierce refusal to accept erasure, really insisting on your own truth. And then retrocausality, which sounds complex, but here it means actively using who you are now to go back and, well, reinterpret past events, to bring dignity back where it was maybe erased by bureaucracy. And these aren't just, theories in a book. They're presented as lived practices, real things people do.
Right. So our mission today is basically to see how this one individual uses things like old childhood photos and just this deep sense of personal integrity to reframe their own history. And maybe it offers a kind of blueprint, for anyone who's felt like their story got overwritten by someone else, by some system. Get ready for some, I think, pretty profound aha moments here. Okay, so let's start. Our journey begins in 1973. We have these two really vivid photographs of someone the author calls Wee Jaime. Imagine a little kid, 2.5 years old, assigned male at birth, AMAB, and that detail becomes really important later when we talk about identity and the state. So, first photo. The child's crouching down, totally focused on a sandal strap, eyes looking down. Then there's another one. The child's being held, gathered up in the arms of the man who will become her adoptive father. He looks, confident. But the child. The expression is described as both present and somehow absent, distant.
Yeah, and what just leaps out and what the source really unpacks brilliantly is this paradox, right? On the surface, you see this ordinary-looking kid, nicely dressed, but underneath, the author describes this child as being seen as a problem to be solved. A vessel, that's the word used for other people's projections, hopes, obligations, inconveniences. It completely flips your initial take on those photos.
That's such a stark contrast, isn't it? The seen versus the felt reality. And it really hammers home how little agency this child had. Zero, basically. The author says she was nobody's choice and yet everybody's responsibility. Think about that. An inconvenience for some, a fragile hope for others, a legal obligation in the eyes of the state. It's kind of heartbreaking thinking of a child as just a file to be processed, not a person.
Exactly. So the question becomes, what do these photos actually hold on to then? If not the neat story the adults make up later, and the author's clear, they capture the living fact of my presence in that moment. Not the myths constructed after, not the fiction of a child assigned into a family by adoption decree. It's like this small body was there undeniably. And that physical fact kind of disrupts the tidy narrative the bureaucracy wanted to impose.
In tracing this timeline, you see how this in-between state, this liminality, it leads directly to this moment of identity being formally assigned. 1973 is described as a year suspended in amber, a time before the adoption was legally finalized. So the child was, as the author puts it, not yet claimed but already marked, just sort of drifting in a system that wasn't built to ask, who are you?
And this brings us right into the specific experience of an autistic mind processing the world. The source talks about being this wee autistic child, a GLP, that's Gestalt language professor. Someone who learns language in chunks, like whole phrases, not word by word, before there were words or acronyms.
Mm-hmm.
And for this child, life wasn't remembered as a story, a narrative. It was remembered as sensation.
Sensation, like what?
Like the grit of sand, the scratch of certain clothes, the feeling of someone's gaze sharp, maybe threatening or maybe welcoming. These were the real languages being spoken and understood way before formal language kicked in.
Yeah.
The language of safety or danger.
Wow. And then comes what's described as the shock of entry, not into safety, but into strangeness. The author talks about feeling marooned in Southern California, jettisoned, like unclaimed baggage. And there's just no thought in the system, apparently, that a child might need to, return to their actual home, their origins.
And what's really critical here, according to the source, is the communication breakdown that happened next. With the adoptive family, their language, as described, involved sarcasm presented as wit, ridicule disguised as affection, pranks as proof of belonging, somehow.
Oh, no.
But for an autistic mind, tuned always to sincerity, the author says, every word landed as literal truth. So when someone laughed at her or made a cruel joke, she felt only the sting, never the joke. The supposed humor just didn't register, only the hurt.
That's devastating. And the impact The source says even 50 years later, those barbs lodge deep. Night terrors that aren't really nightmares, but memories that never had permission to sleep.
Exactly. And the author emphasizes an autistic Gestalt processor does not forget. We keep the scripts whole. Meaning the whole scene, the tones, the words, that awful feeling when trust flips into betrayal, it's all stored, like intact in the nervous system. It doesn't fade or get reframed easily.
Which makes it so important then to remember the child before all that, in that liminal space before the terror. The source argues we need to see that child as real, whole, alive in her own truth before the fractures started.
Yes. Doing justice to that original self becomes paramount.
And this leads us right to this idea of identity being assigned by adoption. The author is really clear this isn't just a phrase, it's the actual mechanism that unmade and remade a life.
Right. And it's different from being assigned at birth. In this case, the actual birth records are sealed, locked away by the Los Angeles Superior Court. The very start of this person's life story is legally hidden. Wow. And the source gives us a glimpse into how the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS, worked back in the 70s, described as cold machinery, a factory line focused on throughput, getting kids processed and placed.
Throughput. That's a chilling word for children's lives.
Isn't it? It suggests the system saw children as case numbers, as files needing to be closed, rather than individuals with inherent identities and needs beyond just placement.
And the bureaucracy, it sounds like it was just brutally efficient in its own way.
Oh, absolutely. Uncertain birth date. Okay, default to the first of the month. Done. New names, new social security numbers, whole new identities, conjured anew by the stroke of a pen, creating what the author calls a legal fiction.
Can you even imagine having your basic existence just overwritten like that on paper?
And the impact is ongoing. The author points out that any birthday celebration is tinged with the knowledge that I am not marking the day of my birth, but the day of my assignment. It's a date tied to a bureaucratic act, not your lived beginning. That must profoundly shape your sense of self, your continuity.
And there's another huge contrast drawn in the source, right, between this LA bureaucracy and the individual's actual roots.
Yes, a really stark one. Their bloodline traces back to the lush West Highlands of Scotland, where community was defined by kinship, not caseloads, deep ancestral ties. And yet, they were marooned in the crushing density of Los Angeles, this massive county. It's not just moving house, it's a profound cultural and historical dislocation.
Being stripped of one story and grafting onto another, as the author says.
Precisely. The court never asked who I was, only where I could be placed. Which really makes you think, what happens when the systems meant to protect kids deem their actual identity, their heritage, totally irrelevant?
So this brings us to the core idea the author develops: autistic justice. What does all this history, this erasure, mean for how we understand justice, not just legally, but personally, existentially?
Well, for the author, autistic justice is this deep, unwavering refusal to just let go, to accept the fictions that were imposed. It's described as constantly tugging at the loose threads of the story, trying to piece the truth back together. An insistence on fidelity to your own experience, your own reality.
Which sounds like the complete opposite of forgetting.
Exactly. It's contrasted with what the author observes as an oath of forgetting among many adults involved in or close to the trauma. A kind of unspoken agreement to move on, perhaps. But the autistic GLP mind, the source argues, can't do that. It refuses erasure. The gaps become unbearable. You have to try and make sense of it, make it whole.
Okay, but how do you even start doing that when so much information is deliberately hidden or lost?
That's where the scraps become so important. Little bits of things, overheard memories, maybe a faint record somewhere, even old policy manuals from the agency. These aren't just random bits, they become precious fragments, evidence. They resist erasure, they testify to what really happened, even if the official story denies it.
It's like detective work on your own life.
In a way, yes. And this leads us back to retrocausality. The author insists this is more than metaphor, it's a lifeline, a lived practice.
Yeah.
So how does that work here?
Yeah, explain that a bit more. Retrocausality sounds like time travel.
Well, not quite like in the movies. Here, it means taking the knowledge and understanding you have now, your current identity, your awareness of the past, and carrying it back to those 1973 photographs or other past moments. You reinterpret them through this new lens. You're not changing the physical event, but you are changing its meaning, its significance. You're restoring dignity where bureaucracy imposed shame.
Okay, so it's about reframing, not altering facts. The author calls it editing.
Exactly. Editing. To put the emphasis back on the truth that was buried or ignored, not rewriting history to make up something new.
That distinction feels really important because some might hear it changing the past and think it's about denial or fabrication.
Right, but it's the opposite. It's about confronting the actual truth of the child's experience in that moment, even if the official narrative, the legal fiction, said something different. It's an insistence that the child in those photos still demands recognition. She will not be erased because autistic justice refuses to leave her behind.
Hmm.
And this isn't presented as like an unhealthy obsession. It's framed as survival, an act of profound integrity.
Okay. And this personal fight for truth, this insistence, it then ripples outward, doesn't it? The author connects it to wider systemic resonance. We're encouraged to look at the vast apparatus of adoption, foster care, and child protection and ask, does it really protect or does it sometimes erase?
Yeah, that's the hard question posed.
Yeah.
Systems like LA County DCFS, described as this colossus, can end up viewing children primarily as files, a case number, a loose thread to be tied up neatly. The priority can slip from genuine safety and love to just placement, getting the case closed. And the source argues that sometimes the language of care masks the reality of expedience.
And for autistic children specifically, there's another layer of potential harm within these systems.
Yes, the source details a specific kind of violence they can face. Because they're not easily legible to bureaucratic systems, their ways of being are often misunderstood, misfiled, re-scripted.
Like how?
While examples given are stimming behavior seen merely as disruptive, gestalt processing, learning in chunks, misinterpreted as a delay, and that deep integrity, that insistence on truth, might be labeled as defiant or oppositional,
So their very nature can be pathologized by the system.
which leads to this brutal paradox. The paperwork ends up having more authority than the person's actual lived identity. A sealed file, a birth certificate generated by the state, can literally overwrite your own memory, your own truth. And the author's forceful here. This isn't just an occasional mistake. It's systemic violence, not accident. It's a pattern that gets replicated. It's also what some call epistemic violence, where your knowledge, your way of knowing the world, is systematically undermined and dismissed by power structures.
And that's why, going back to autistic justice, that autistic integrity refuses the compromise of silence. You can't just live comfortably with the fiction if your whole being demands truth.
Right. That refusal to abandon truth becomes an act of resistance. Remembering isn't just looking back fondly, it's rebellion against erasure.
And the author connects this personal experience to much broader patterns of erasure, too, doesn't she?
Yes, explicitly drawing parallels to the experiences of indigenous children stolen from their families and cultures, and Black children disproportionately removed into the system. It highlights a recurring theme where state systems, often under the guise of care, disrupt identities and sever connections to heritage and truth.
So naming this, seeing this pattern, is to begin the work of justice. Autistic justice, then, is about that fidelity to truth, carrying yourself forward whole, and in doing so, exposing the violence hidden in the system.
Remembering becomes survival. It's that powerful.
Okay, so armed with all this insight, now autistic justice, retrocausality, systemic erasure. Let's go back one last time to those two photographs from 1973. How do they look different now?
Radically different. That child crouching over the sandal strap, not just clumsy anymore. The reinterpretation is she was abandoned to figure things out too soon, learning the hard lesson of what it means to be untethered without proper guidance. It's a picture of early loss, not just toddler fumbling.
Wow. And the other photo, the child in the man's arms.
Her posture is now seen as defensive, weary. There's no lean of comfort into his body. Her arms are dangling awkwardly, guarding herself, because, as the author puts it so powerfully, my body already knew. The body holds wisdom, a truth that the official proceedings were completely ignoring, a truth the state was designed not to hear.
That's incredibly moving, and the author then imagines, using this retrocausality, actually reaching back through time.
Yes, first, just to whisper to that child, I see you, I honor the wisdom in your body. A validation across decades.
And then something bolder.
Yeah, imagining being back in that courtroom. This time, guiding the clerk's hand to check the box female, standing there as a guardian for that little lass, and saying to the court, basically, this is who she is. Honor her as she is. Protect her legacy, her Scottish roots. She's not the kind of femme you might recognize easily, but her people do honor them. Honor her.
Wow.
Do not ridicule her. Don't try to bind her light to fit your narrow ideas. And please, do not mistake cruelty for care.
That's reclaiming agency in the most profound way. And again, emphasizing the Scottish roots, the kinship, not caseload, protecting her inheritance, her lineage.
It's a defiant act of self-reclamation across time and trauma.
So in the end, the fracture happened, the terror was real, but the photographs themselves, they remain unbroken.
Yes. They're a reminder that the child, the true self, was there all along, bent low and fumbling, straight-backed and wary, her body telling truths the state never wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So what we've really unpacked today, it's not just about memory. It feels much bigger. It's a profound act of justice in itself, a living example of that retrocausality concept. The present reaching back gently and restoring dignity where bureaucracy just imposed silence and fiction.
Yeah, this deep dive, it really shows how one person's journey, and it's part of a broader trans experience too, which is important context, offers these incredibly powerful insights for reclaiming any story that's been fractured or overwritten. And it highlights something important about our role, maybe, when we interact with others, especially those navigating complex identities. Our role is often to be a guardian. That's a really key takeaway. Think about it. If you have an autistic GLP in your life, maybe especially one who is also trans, your job isn't to assign them an identity. It's not to overwrite their experience with your own expectations. It's not to try and crush them into fitting your idea of who they should be. Your role, as the author suggests, is to be the guardian. Stand beside them in their truth. Trust the wisdom their body holds. Protect their sense of continuity when the world tries to break it.
Because, yeah, ultimately, this isn't about rewriting history in the sense of changing facts. It's about reclaiming it, restoring wholeness to a story that got split apart by courts and sealed files and sometimes, yeah, cruelty disguised as care. It's about remembering where to begin again, always with the truth of that authentic self and reclaiming the ending that was meant to be.